How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. We've met a few times through radio. I'm not doing radio anymore, but uh, in San Francisco, you played BFD a couple times when I
Yeah.
was there, and then at 91X in San Diego.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome to see you again. I like you. You have a very austere space that you're
Yeah, well,
in.
it's funny because like literally my family just moved to Nashville, so we haven't had
Oh shit.
like any time to like put anything up yet. That's why I have like two posters and then like a record on the floor.
I love it. Where did you move from?
San Diego.
San Diego. Okay.
Yeah. I
Okay,
will
sweet.
say when you release Solutions, I didn't have a chance. You did like a X session with us when I was working
Yeah.
at 91X, and it was really funny. I didn't get a chance to go because I was on the air at the time, and I sent our music director with the record to see if he could sign it for me. And I wrote my name on a sticky note just so like she knew it was my record. And you wrote, "Hey Adam, I spelled your name right," and then you signed your name. I was
Sounds
like,
like something I would do.
yeah, I was like, that's awesome. So thanks for signing my record too.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure.
All right. Well, so this podcast is all about you, your journey in music, and how you got to where you are now, and we'll talk about your new record coming out as well.
Cool.
Awesome. So I did read that you're from Chicago area. Tell me a little
Yes.
bit about that.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the northern suburbs of Chicago. It's right by Northwestern University. A lot of
Okay.
people know where that's at, and yeah, it's a pretty leafy green, relatively low low drama type of place. So in many ways, it was a very wonderful environment to grow up in and be like a young kid. But yeah, I left when I started college. I moved to California,
Mhm.
and that was kind of like
When music started.
that was like when my world. I think when my world opened up in many ways. Part of that was starting to make music, but I think the
Mhm.
other part was just this much greater broadening of my understanding of this world, what
Sure.
it what it looks like, what it can look like, what I can look like inside of it. All those things really just kind of got exploded in the best way when I moved.
Amazing. I mean, obviously, you're very smart if you got into Stanford. I mean, that's pretty.
Well, they admit some idiots, but I'd like to
Ah,
think I was not one of
I
those.
don't know about that. Well, tell me about when did you get into music? Like,
Yeah,
how,
so
where did you?
I really got into music when I was at college. It was this time when there was, tons of like file sharing, and particularly
Mhm.
at college campuses where there were these like internal networks that were kind of protected. Everyone in the dorm would upload whatever music they had. And so there
Sure.
was this library for me to explore. And I think one of the biggest things that happened my first 2 years there was that I got introduced to so much music that I had never even, it hadn't even entered my orbit, because up until that time, I really just sort of listened to like what was on the radio and
Okay.
nothing else. And I got exposed to a lot of indie rap,
Mhm.
a lot of West Coast stuff, but also that was like the moment that I first heard Wiley and Dizzy Rascal, and I was getting into grime, and I guess I was really excited by these eccentric and kind of like non-commercial or whatever
Sure.
uh, forms of music.
Mhm.
And that was, in many ways, the reason that I began making music. And I did it as a pure hobby. I was a
Mhm.
very serious student. That was always my priority. But I started, I remember the first time this guy called me and he was like, "I heard you make music. Do you want to play a show?" And I was like, "What?" I mean, I had never, I wasn't even in like school plays. Like, I didn't know how to be on
Oh,
stage. I
I was
wasn't.
gonna ask, so you were never even the band or anything like that?
No, no.
Okay.
So I was like, I'm just completely like self-taught ad hoc everything, which might
I love
explain
that.
like sort of how my career has evolved. But yeah, my biological father did teach me to play kind of like rudimentary guitar when I
Okay.
was, probably around 10 or so. Um, but I never did anything with that. I just sort of would play rhythm guitar with him
Okay.
when I would see him sometimes at home.
But never outside of that? You never, like, tried to play in a
No.
band or
Oh my God,
even
no. No, no, no.
okay.
No, no, no.
Even what about, like, trying to learn covers that really wasn't that interesting to you at that point?
No.
Oh, okay, wow.
I, I was like, oh yeah, I could play guitar. This is cool. But like,
Uh-huh.
it didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't like permeate my consciousness.
Sure.
Um, and then, I started making music, and it started being this thing. I was actually speaking about this the other day with someone that, I was so regimented and so focused as a teenager. And then I started doing music, and it was this realm where I had no expectations for myself. Like, I
Mhm.
didn't know anyone who did music. I didn't know what a career path looked like. I wasn't part of a scene. I wasn't trying to like get a record deal.
Right.
I didn't even honestly know what songs like should sound like. So it became this arena where, I put all this pressure on myself in these other ways. And then I got to do music, and there was no pressure,
Mhm.
and it was this
Sure.
avenue for me to be really expressive and really honest and really emotional and do it fearlessly. And I don't think I had the wherewithal to understand that at the time.
Mhm.
Only in retrospect does it become apparent, but I think I really needed that outlet at that age.
Yeah.
Um yeah.
So it's almost like yeah, because you were so, like, I wanna say green to it, so you're like you didn't really know, so you were
Mhm.
just kinda doing whatever felt right at the time.
Oh my God, and totally guided by excitement and
Mhm.
curiosity. And I think this is, there's a conversation that I keep having with my my collaborators is like, how do we get back to that place of excitement, and I
Mhm.
think someone we were talking about how like when you're just starting out, all you want is to know more.
Mhm.
And when you're established, all you want is to feel the way you felt when you started out. And
Sure.
it's like, how do you tap into that spirit? Because I think, I was so astounded and delighted by the mere ability I had
Mhm.
to take an idea in my head and turn it into a physical song. I thought that was one of the most amazing things that had ever happened to me.
Sure. I mean, it's like people say, you have a lifetime to put out your first record and then what, like a year to put out your second one.
Right, right, right.
Well, with that, like, I mean, go back to telling me about this. So you get this phone call from somebody and they said you want to play a show. Like, how many songs at this point did you have? Was it kind of just something you were doing around the dorm? Like, how did that phone call happen?
Yeah, I was just making music around in my dorm room. I was also learning at the same time, to code websites. So I built a little website, and I would host my music on it. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I performed just 3 songs at this thing.
Okay.
And, I'm grateful there's no footage of it. I don't think there is. A true humiliation. But, again, speaking about this greenness, I didn't even have any preconceptions about like how I should behave on stage, how I should
Mhm.
move on stage. And so I think there's always been something about, my performance style and my songwriting style and genrelessness, or whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
that kind of reflects these beginnings
Mhm.
of not having a rule book and not having a plan in a sense.
Sure. Well, with that, like, I mean, you talked about, playing this first show and not really knowing what you were doing. Like, was there a moment like when you started getting attention? like, oh wow, you're really, really good at this. Like you should really pursue this. You remember when that moment was?
Yeah, I think that moment happened after I graduated. So
Okay.
I was playing shows on campus, doing my thing, whatever. And after I graduated is when I started to really become a part of the Bay Area music scene, like not
Okay.
just not just at Stanford, but in this broader metropolitan area, and in that context, where like established musicians were
You're playing bigger venues around
wanting to
town.
connect with me, where I'm getting
Sure.
to open at like a real venue. and
Right.
and I got, I had an early mentor at that time, who is half of a hip hop group that I loved, and still love, called Zion I,
Mhm.
and the producer half of that sort of took me under his wing, and taught me a lot about production and performance, and really kind of let me into their world in many ways, and I was able to just be a fly on the wall.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I just started, one of the greatest pieces of advice he gave me was just like, learn how to do everything, be self-sufficient. And a buddy of mine who was also making music in college, um this guy Andrew, he was like, yeah, do everything yourself, learn how to do it yourself. And that was my ethos
Mhm.
when I began, and I really took a lot of joy in that. Not that I'm good at designing t-shirts, but like designing t-shirts, making my flyers, setting up the whole show. I mean, I was a one woman band for a long time, so I was just up there alone doing
Yeah.
my thing.
Total DIY.
Uh-huh. And that, of course, that lays the foundation for things, I think, to work really well in the future if you
Mhm.
want to keep doing it. Because even if you don't keep designing t-shirts, which thank the Lord I don't, um, it allows you, when you're collaborating with somebody who does design merch, to speak with them not only with respect for what they do, but with some level of understanding in terms of like what's possible, how things are done.
Sure.
So it just creates like a better flow of communication with your team as it hopefully, gets bigger and grows.
Yeah, you're more well-rounded in like every aspect of the industry or, your brand.
Exactly.
With that's interesting. I was curious, like when you finished school at Stanford, were you pursuing a totally different career path? And like at what point do you go, you know what, I'm gonna go this music route. Like I know I just finished school, but I'm gonna take
Yeah.
this on.
I, I graduated, and I was sort of in a little bit of a limbo state. I was teaching the GREs and the SATs, like
Okay.
teaching classes and tutoring, and actually making, you know, like pretty nice little income for myself doing that. And it gave me a lot of freedom. So basically, like, I started teaching most days at 4 p.m., like 4 to 10, and
Hmm.
then I had the daytime to work. And my parents had actually moved out to the Bay Area. They were living in Oakland, and they very graciously lent me their basement to work out of.
Okay.
So I did this, like, I had this crazy work day. I got up, I drove to Oakland, I worked on music during the daytime, and then I taught standardized testing for 6 hours. um, and I think on some level, I knew that I wasn't ready to commit to like a career per
Uh-huh.
se, um, because I was starting to feel like, okay, music is, people are asking me to do things,
Mhm.
and for me that felt like these little tiny like nudges in the direction of do this thing, try it. And so I just kept saying yes to opportunities, and I was getting better at production, I was getting better at recording my own vocals, I was getting better at performing. And yeah, that was like the first couple years out of college, really what I was doing. And I think, again, when we're talking about this opening up of the world. That
Hmm.
was a really crucial period for me, just personally, in terms of broadening, I think the scope of how I'm going to live in the world, how I can be in the world. Just being 23 and living in San Francisco with two of my best childhood friends and another best friend, just being idiots, and I
Sure.
think like that was that was very important for me to do.
Right, right. Around that time, was that when you put out the self-titled EP? And
Mm,
was that produced by
hmm.
yourself? Like, was that done in the basement?
That was done in the basement, exactly.
Wow. Okay.
Done in my parents' basement, and that EP, along with a mixtape called "I Stopped Caring" in '96, which came just a little bit after that, like a year or two after that.
Hmm.
Um, those were sort of the things that started propelling my career. I got signed very early to a record deal with RCA, and now that I've been around for long enough and met enough people, I was signed in pretty typical fashion, in that I was a young artist with buzz,
Sure.
and I got a nice record deal and some money, and
Hmm.
I felt really excited about that. And again, I,
Yeah.
I was sort of like, okay, this is the next step. Like,
Well,
here we go.
validated, right? For all the hard work you've
Totally.
been doing.
Totally. I think, both validated and a little bit confounded, like, oh my God, what? I'm like, I still feel like I'm just like, fucking around. I don't really know what
Sure.
I'm doing.
At this
And
point, are you like, I don't have to teach the SAT classes
correct,
anymore?
correct. I
Like,
stopped, I stopped doing that.
so that must have been big too. I mean, this is your career now, right?
Yeah, it was big. And I don't, it's hard sometimes in the moment to know that it's the moment,
Hmm.
to
Sure.
to celebrate the moment just because there's all these things happening. But yeah, this was the time when I stopped. I quit my day job and I started doing music full time. And I moved to New York, and I went through again a very typical new artist experience of having tons of sessions with different producers, many of whom, I am friends with to this day, but I was, you know, I just didn't have that real sense of self as an artist quite yet.
Hmm.
And I had been so used to making music in very different circumstances that I think my understanding of even how to collaborate was totally underdeveloped at that time. And I came out of the experience with RCA, because I guess after a couple years I got dropped, and you know luckily they had allowed me to put out some mixtapes and EPs
Hmm.
while I was there, and I toured pretty extensively. So I was able to build this fan base while I was there, even though I didn't put out a full-length record proper.
Sure.
And I was able to learn by being in all these sessions and by being in all these different studios. I was kind of able to pick up, small things everywhere I went. And after I got dropped, there was a brief period of, like, fuck.
Right. I mean, yeah, you dedicated all this time. You got signed to a major label. Is it one of those things where you're like, do I keep doing this? I mean,
Yeah, I don't think I had that thought, but I had the thought of like, how am I going to keep doing this?
got it.
There was a reckoning for sure, because all the demos that I'd been working on as part of my deal to leave, they owned. So I sort of had to just
Oh, you had
leave
to
that
just
record deal
give
and
them
just
everything.
and start fresh, which
Wow.
initially felt very painful.
Hmm.
However, again, when we're talking about the 2020ness of hindsight, that was the best thing that could happen for me,
Really?
because yeah, because I had to I had to start from scratch, and having to do that kind of forced me to reconnect with that compass north of my taste
Mhm.
and my vision. And I don't think I would have been able to do that if I had been sort of revising past material. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so it was that kind of starting over process, that rebuilding, that gave rise to my first record, which is called Life as a Dog.
Mhm.
I put that out independently.
Yeah, more back to your DIY roots, right? I mean, back
Hmm.
to how it all started at that
Yeah.
point.
And, I was still with my manager who, I've been with through all of this, who's really my partner in so many ways. And he and I came out of that RCA experience like, okay, let's fucking do it ourselves, like
Sure.
why can't we?
Right.
And that, I think, pulling ourselves up by those bootstraps, tapping into the core fan base, that record was crowdfunded, and
Wow.
that experience was really overwhelming. Just the support that we got was kind of blew my mind, just knowing, oh, okay, all those shows we played, all the hours we put in, these mixtapes I've been putting out, like, people are connecting with it,
Mhm.
and it's meaningful to them. And I think knowing that really gave me that confidence to say, okay, I'm going to keep
Keep
I'm going to
going.
keep I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to
Mhm.
keep trying to say things that feel important to me to say.
Mhm.
And so I put out that record, and then, in many ways that was the beginning of my career, I guess.
Sure, sure. Well, because at that point, I mean, that drew the attention of Interscope then, right? I mean, you get signed to Interscope on the next record.
Correct. Yeah.
So
So
was that kind of a going back to a major label, was that anything of concern, or was it a totally different environment, totally different approach the second time around?
Well, it was a concern.
Okay.
However, I had a really special situation there. So I was getting ready to put out my next record again independently,
Mhm.
and feeling excited about that. We'd had such a positive experience with Life as a Dog, and we'd even gotten like some radio play, and just things that were really unexpected and really cool.
Yeah,
And
you
then
did like a 99, I think you did a show for us when I was in San Diego for like 91 cents
yeah, yeah, yeah.
on that album.
Yeah, at the Casbah, right?
Casbah,
I remember
yeah.
that show. Um, and so we were like, I could feel it. I could feel everywhere we went, there was more people at every show, and people knew
Mhm.
all the words, and like, Life as a Dog, like, had this like crazy following in Germany, and we did all this tour, like, so I was starting to see, okay, this is like, I can do this, I can go to travel Europe, I can,
So
and
rad.
it was, it's a dream come true. And then I got an email from Dan Reynolds, who is the lead singer of Imagine
Mhm.
Dragons, and outside of that, just a super talented songwriter. He writes for
Sure.
many other artists and a great person. And he was like, I'm thinking about starting up an imprint at Interscope, and I love your music. Do you want to like Skype?
Wow.
And I was like, okay, let's do it. And, he and I began really just a friendship,
Sure.
and a communication. I think Dan and I share a lot of values, and a way of looking at the world. And Dan's perspective was, I'm in this band that makes a lot of money for Interscope Records,
Sure.
um, and I can help be that buffer, because I think what's so hard about major labels is for mid-size artists, sometimes there's just not that support. Even if you have a totally sustainable and successful career, it can be hard to have access to those resources, because
Mhm.
for every K.Flay there's a Billie Eilish, and
Right.
which is awesome, and that's a giant operation. um but that's it's like they're dealing with Lady Gaga and Kendrick and
Right.
Billy
Yeah. I
and
mean, they have
Selena Gomez
yeah,
and
they're A-list, yeah, people that
yeah,
they're going to put all their attention on,
and Imagine
obviously.
Dragons and
I was going to say,
like
yeah, Imagine Dragons.
and Maroon 5 and so these giant bands. So you have to, for me I'm trying to think like, well, how do I'd love to have some of these resources
Mm-hmm.
because there are things that a major label, there's power there to get you into spaces that are hard to get into. But of course there's the danger of kind of getting lost. And so Dan was really like, yeah, let's make sure you get to do what you're trying to do. And so I really had, as I say, a unique situation over there with Dan A&Ring essentially
Right, because he could
my
go to the right people and say, "Hey, this record's rad. Like, let's put some focus on it," or
correct.
instead of just kind of getting pushed to the side.
Yeah, and having a champion like that who, people really respect in that
Mm-hmm.
building.
Sure.
Again, speaking to Dan's character, not just that Imagine Dragons is a very successful band. Dan is a great person who people respect. So
Mm-hmm.
he was, yeah, just a huge part of Everywhere is Somewhere, which is my second record. And that record kind of really opened the gates for me
Oh yeah.
to, and we were talking about radio earlier, like really getting radio play, entering that world of alternative radio, and just expanding, just
Yeah.
continuing to grow.
Well, you got like the seat at the table with all of these A-list people in that record. I mean, you get nominated for 2 Grammy Awards. I mean, that's mind blowing, I would think, right?
Yeah. Yes, definitely very surprising, and yeah, just yeah, that record did did really change the set of opportunities that were available to me. And yeah, it was just a beautiful record. I love that record. I'm super proud of it. I love the people I made it with, many of whom I continue to make all my records with still.
Sure.
And yeah, that was just a really beautiful experience.
And then you put another record out with Interscope Solutions, the one we were
Yes.
talking about earlier, where you said I
Yes.
spelled your name right, which I
Yes. Which
love.
okay, very good.
What would you say, like the takeaway or like a milestone moment from that record would be for you?
I think with Solutions more than anything, the big takeaway milestone was touring.
Okay.
So interestingly, or not interestingly, so Solutions didn't didn't do as well commercially as Everywhere is Somewhere, in terms of radio and streams and things like that. But I love that record, and of course we toured
Yeah.
on it, and we built this like really elaborate set. I don't know if you ever got a chance to see that show, but
Yeah, I did.
we
You
built
yeah.
this like pyramid. Did you see that?
Was that the Sir Sly tour, or am I thinking of one
No, no,
earlier than
no.
that?
This is
Okay.
this is after that.
Okay.
Um,
I don't think I did see the show that.
yeah, I think you'd remember it. Basically, we built this like plexiglass giant multicolored pyramid on stage that we like ensconced the band in, and then
Oh
I like
wow, no,
climbed all
I didn't
over.
see that show. I totally blew it.
Yeah, it's totally fine. But we basically built this like really elaborate and awesome jungle gym for me to have on
That's
stage.
dope.
And I'm a very active performer, and
Hmm.
I love moving around, and I love expressing myself in that way. And we had our biggest headline shows ever,
Hmm.
and we created this really cool visual experience. And I think again, I the way that I view my career isn't like I'm not living single to single.
Right.
I'm living across a body of work. And so although Solutions didn't hit, I guess, in this quite in the same way as Everywhere is Somewhere, I was that didn't stop me from making this live experience that I feel like took everything again to a higher level and to
Sure.
the next level.
Yeah, I'm bummed I didn't see that. I feel bad now.
It's okay. It's on YouTube. You can check it out.
Well, yeah, I guess not the same thing, but that's awesome. I mean, I would. Well, so then that record came out in 2019, I believe,
Yes,
right?
correct.
So where was this, like, was that tour still happening when like the world closed down? Like, tell me about where you were when like
Yeah.
this virus hits.
So the virus hits for me at a, very convenient time. Unlike, unfortunately, for many of my friends who were just getting ready to put stuff out, we had just finished touring. So
Okay.
I had wrapped. I was basically the first half of 2020. I didn't have a show
Oh,
booked,
wow.
or not till April or something. I think our
Okay.
first show was in April. So and those were opening slots, a little bit, more limited run, not any headline shows, because the plan was to finish my next record,
Hmm.
and put that out. So, COVID hitting obviously had many effects on me as a human being and as a musician, but it did not totally derail an album release or a tour plan,
Okay.
which, was, very, very lucky for me.
Hmm. So okay, so you were kind of in limbo period between playing a show. Were you writing with this new EP, or because
Yeah,
you did this cover record, which is awesome. I love it.
thank you.
Yeah, don't judge a song by its cover. The I didn't know what to expect, so like I put it on and I'm like, okay, self-esteem. Piano version, like what a bold move and how amazing it is. Like it blew me away. And then Green Day is like one of my favorite bands of all time. And the way you did Brain Stew without the like none of that was
Right.
in it. I was like, this is like it was just such a cool way to approach the songs, and the Limp Bizkit cover is dope too. That one
Thank you.
sounds like it should just be your original song.
Right.
I mean, to be honest, like the melody you created for the chorus
Yeah.
is so sick. But
Thank you.
tell me about that. Was that something that you were working on because of the quarantine, or?
Yeah. So that was, the I did, of course, have a plan get derailed, like everyone. I
Sure.
was gonna be putting out original music earlier.
Okay.
And obviously as the pandemic raged on and it became clear that this was gonna take over the
Hmm.
year at least, I did wanna put something out. And I'd had this idea for a little bit, just really a germ of an idea about self-esteem, that song
Hmm.
in particular, because I heard it on the radio at some point and was just like, I guess I had never really listened to the lyrics that closely before, and I was just like, oh my God, this song is so sad.
Yeah, it
Um,
really is.
yeah, I was shocked at how sad it was, and I thought it kind of spun me out on this longer train of thought about how I think so often young men and men are socialized to channel that kind of vulnerability into sort of forms of aggression or anger, and is often we don't get to see that vulnerability, or it's not really put in the forefront. So I thought it would be quite interesting to approach that song and a couple other prototypically male aggressive alt
Hmm.
rock songs from the mid to late 90s, um, with the challenge of how do we highlight the tenderness. How can
Yeah.
we find tenderness, and can I express it? And with self-esteem, obviously, that's pretty straightforward. It's a piano ballad about,
Hmm.
sort of, are you taking care of yourself? Are you valuing yourself in a relationship? With Brain Stew, that song was originally written about the experience of being on speed and trying to sleep,
Hmm.
which is a terrifying experience and a claustrophobic experience. And I thought, well, maybe I can reframe that. Instead of the world is closing in on me, maybe the world's actually opening up, because I personally have found that the moments where it does feel like I can't I can't go any lower, I can't find a way out.
Uh-huh.
Those are actually the moments, of course, unexpectedly, where I turn to the right and there's a window, and I realize, oh yeah, actually, I do know how to get out of here, but it took me getting to this dark place to understand that the world, in fact, was revealing itself to me.
Sure.
And then, with Limp Bizkit, well, that was a big challenge. That song was a big challenge. But
You
I
nailed it.
wanted,
It's so
thank you.
good. It's so good.
It was a challenge, but that song was kind of my quarantine anthem, to be honest. So
Really?
well, yeah, some days you don't want to wake up. Everything is fucked and everybody sucks. Uh, that felt pretty accurate for
Pretty
a while.
straightforward, right? Yeah.
I was kind of like, I feel you, Fred. So I wanted to see if I could do that justice, because again, I think that feeling of, in the song right here, he is screaming, "Give me something to break," and I'm not a violent person at all, and I don't relate to that in a way, but I relate to a feeling of having no outlet and of feeling depressed and hopeless. And to
Mhm.
me, that sense of like, give me something to break, anything, your face, the wall, that to me stems out of a deep sadness. And so I
Mhm.
thought, well, if I could create a wistful version of this song, maybe 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 that would be compelling.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the melody you threw on the chorus is so good. And just the way the whole song is framed out, it's it should be your song, to be honest. Like, it's that good. Like, I was
Thank you.
really shocked, like, how, because I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice of a cover. But then you hear it and I'm like, damn, this is
Thank you very much.
brilliant. Like, yeah, it's amazing. And same with the new song that you just released. I love that song as well, Four Letter Words. And I want to talk to you about the new EP, Inside Voices, that is coming out. Talk to me about this record. Was this all done over the course of being stuck inside and this whole
Yeah.
quarantine?
Yeah. So many of these songs were begun just before COVID hit,
Okay.
but everything was finished and done in quarantine. I mean, I recorded vocals. It's funny. One of the songs on the record, for an earlier period of quarantine, my friends were in New York, and so I was using their whole house as a studio.
Oh, wow.
And like I recorded the vocals for one of those songs in their dining room. I
Wow.
so I was just like, I was doing whatever, and I think, like everyone, just trying to figure out ways to stay healthy and sane. And thank
Hmm.
God I had music, and thank God I had these projects to work on, including Don't Judge a Song by Its Cover. Like, that gave me something to work towards, knowing I could release it in 2020
Hmm.
because I didn't need to tour on it or anything. It's like, it's just kind of a standalone thing.
Sure.
But yeah, so Inside Voices came together throughout quarantine, and it is really, it is 5 songs that are an expression of my id, essentially, is the concept. And in different ways, I think they each represent a form of catharsis and rebellion, in a
Hmm.
way. And with Four Letter Words, which is the first single, I kind of think you can tell what's going on
Sure.
there,
Yeah. It's
but
pretty straightforward,
pretty straightforward. But
right?
I think that's what's exciting about it to me, and was actually kind of scary about it to me, was that it is so straightforward.
Hmm.
Um, and you know, particularly as a woman, it's uncomfortable for me to say that. And in the song, I kind of spell it out. I say, like, I'm usually nice,
Hmm.
but just for tonight, I want to be mean. I want to say this thing that,
Sure.
and I think, whether it's in the context of a relationship, whether it's in the context of your job, whether it's in the context of your government and the society you live in, there we all reach a breaking point, and I feel more than ever, given everything that is happening in the world and in this country, we need positive catharsis. And positive catharsis, in my opinion, leads to positive action
Mhm.
in the end, right?
Mhm.
And it's yeah, it's been so important to me and crucial to me to have my own vehicles for catharsis, you know, just to safely be able to say like fuck you in
Mhm.
whatever context I need to, and then I can move forward. You know,
Mhm.
then I can get my things done. Then I can be a part of something bigger than myself. But this song in many ways was, you know, I think is the entry point to the many of the themes and the tone of this EP.
I love the song, and like even the first line about like drinking tequila, like it's just like right in your face. Like I love it.
Yeah, many people have pointed out to me that a liter of tequila, I'm pretty sure would kill me. I don't know how much. I'm trying to think
That's
how big a
probably a lot of
liter is, but
that's a lot of tequila.
it's a lot of tequila.
That
I
is
don't think I've ever had a liter. Just for the record, I don't think I've ever had a liter of tequila, but it just came out of me. I like literally sat down. I started playing that riff, and I was
uh-huh.
like, I drank a liter of tequila. It just sounded good, you know.
Yeah.
And I was feeling sad, and I was feeling angry, and so these things, these images were just like pouring out of me.
I love it. Yeah, it's a powerful song to say the least. And you have some rad collaborations on that record too with you have Travis Barker and Tom
Yep.
Morello. Like with them, were you able, I know you've worked with Tom Morello before because you had a song with him
Right.
a few years ago, but like did you send him like the song and he just did his thing? Like how did that like those collaborations
Yeah.
work?
So with Tom, I had, you know, I had this little demo, again, kind of me and guitar, which is how I build a lot of songs, where I like play pretty shitty guitar and start writing, and then I bring it to one of my production collaborators, and we make it sound a lot better. So that song was in that process,
Okay.
and at some point during that process, I think a light bulb went on with the group, like we should ask Tom to play on this, because it's, you know, the song is about, I think in many ways, what it feels like to be a, a citizen in a capitalistic society who sort of rages against it, and yet you still got to pay rent, you know? So it's like
Sure.
this confusing thing of like, yeah, you know what? Fuck the system. And like, this is so unfair, and it's built on racism and misogyny. And I know these things, like I know them intellectually. And at the same time,
You got to play the
I
game.
need a
Yeah.
house, you know, I
Right,
need an
right.
apartment or whatever, and I need to buy groceries. And so I was struggling with those feelings. And of course, who better to speak to that than Tom Morello,
Sure.
who's arguably been in that kind of debate, or whatever, that tension for his career. And
Sure.
Tom's just you know, become a friend over the years, and I really respect Tom, and really, really, yeah, I just really love being around Tom.
Mhm.
And so sent it to him, was sort of like, hey, can you play the riff, can you play the guitar on this, and also can you like rip one of the craziest solos of your life? Just a small request. And he came through. Whew, yeah.
I can't wait to hear
We were
it.
nervous, you know. It was that feeling like we got it back, and we were like, you know, like, I love Tom, I love pretty much everything he does, so I wasn't like worried, but at the
Right.
same time you're like, what is it gonna be? And we
Right.
threw it in, and it was perfect. Tom absolutely nailed it. And so that's how that collaboration went down.
Mhm.
And with regard to Travis, I had written this song, and it was sounding really great, feeling really stoked on it. It's kind of got a like, well, kind of, there's a sense of humor to the song, I guess, is maybe what I would say.
Well, the title's pretty
Yeah,
you can
dating my
tell.
dad. You're right,
Yeah.
you get it.
Yeah.
There's a
Like an
some
undertone there.
self-awareness and
Yeah.
wink.
Right, right.
And yeah, one of my good friends works with him a lot.
Okay.
and has been working with him a lot for the last like year and a half. And so I just hit up my friend Nick, because I've actually never met Travis, and
Oh, really?
yeah, and uh, was just like, hey, do you think he'd be interested in playing on this? I think he'd kill it, like whatever. And yeah, he sent it to Travis. Travis was like, I love it. And then I think sent me drums like 3 days later.
Oh,
Like
wow.
I was like, you are a professional. Um,
Sure.
and it was great. We had a great dialogue. He did a few different takes and just smashed it. And obviously he's doing tons of collaborations, which I love. And yeah, his tone and style, I think, is just very exciting to listen to,
Mhm.
and I'm really honored to have him on the EP. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I cannot wait to hear the rest of it. Like I said, I've heard the first single, and it's awesome, and everything else you've done over the course, even the course of this quarantine. I mean, the song with Arkells is dope. The Jax
Thank
Anderson
you.
song is dope. Like, I really, I've been a fan for a number of years, and thank you so much for taking this time to talk with me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I hope Nashville living is good living for you.
It
It
is.
seems like a good place to be.
It is. We love it so far. I have one more question for you before I let you go,
Yes,
if that's cool.
yes.
Do you have any advice for aspiring artists?
Oh yeah. Well, I have a few different pieces of advice, but as per this chat, I think building your skill set across a variety of platforms is so helpful and so crucial. Like, I don't know if people really know this, but many or most artists I know, like, know Photoshop, Premiere, maybe Adobe Animate. They can code a website. They record their own vocals. They can, having this ability, whether or not you do it all the time, it it gives you it doesn't make you beholden to others when you want to get shit done. And I think time and time again, what I have found in this business and in this industry is nobody cares about your project like you care about your project. And that's no disrespect to anyone else, but it just means like you are your number one fan, and you kind of have to be, uh not in a narcissistic way, but in a um I think a work ethic way. And so that's been one of the greatest gifts, is the ability to really make things happen for myself when other people didn't feel like helping me make them happen. And that's a really, really powerful tool. Bringing it backward.